And it's, the Bengals, they did some work. They have some players that, they've got some short-term potential, but definitely long-term potential. And there's a lot to talk about. We're going to be here for just a little bit, breaking things down, talking about the picks, maybe giving some grades, and of course, some fallout from the picks and the news that comes from that. We'll be talking about that. I'm Anthony Cosenza. I'm joined by Jason Garrison, who has been playing like a champ. I'm the goon who gets in front of the camera and pretends to be smart and whatever. But you are also doing things on air to help us out, but you are also doing things much more behind the scenes. I put up an article myself today, but you've been putting up many more than I have on Cincy Jungle. So I know you've been burning the candle at both ends, dude. And I appreciate you coming on tonight and giving your thoughts.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Well, we've got a lot to get to, and we'll try and break some, undrafted free agent news as that comes. We will be talking about the draft class, maybe give some grades, favorite picks, and that sort of thing. Let's kind of get to one of the first things that came about because, look, man, the Bengals with all of the picks that they made, they went defense on the first two nights. And they went largely offense, special teams, right? They drafted one corner at the end of the draft there, but I mean it was offense and special teams the whole way here on day 3, and yet no deal for Jonah Williams, no running back drafted until the 5th round. So all of a sudden you have some things that I don't know if you want to call them ringing endorsements. I don't know what you want to call them of Jonah Williams and Joe Mixon, based on all the things going on with them. But it would appear that the Bengals are relying on them. And before we took the air, you were sharing some quotes from Zach Taylor in a post-draft press conference, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the quote is from Zach Taylor. Quote, "Jonah is a valued member of this franchise. We're extremely happy to have him. He's transitioning over to right tackle. I'm excited about that, and he has an opportunity to compete as well. With Jonah being out because of the surgery Jackson Carman is going to be the guy that's going to get the opportunity there, and he's healthy and capable. So excited to see what that competition looks like over there." So basically he's saying that Jonah's the right tackle, but until he's ready to go, interestingly enough, they didn't say anything about La'el Collins.
Nor Cody Ford,
right? So they're saying basically that Jonah's the right tackle, but if he's not ready to go, it's going to be Jackson Carman's job to lose, which, I know that they were talking with, they said several teams about Jonah. My guess is they just didn't get anything they thought was worth a former first-round pick, so I mean, now he's on the roster. He's going to play right tackle. So I don't know. I don't particularly like the fact that he's just consigning it to be Jackson Carman. If Jonah's not healthy, I would have liked to hear a little bit about La'el Collins or a little bit about Cody Ford or Hakeem Adeniji or any, you got several guys. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the right side of the offensive line, or at least right tackle.
My guess is that, number one, I mean, there have been reports or anonymous scouts or GMs saying that teams don't really view Jonah Williams as a lot of teams don't view him as a left tackle or a tackle at all. That may be part of the issue. The other issue is whether it's because of that or whatever. It may be because teams were offering picks not in this year's class.
Could be.
And the Bengals are saying, hey, we want immediate return here if we're going to deal this player. And then, of course, you mentioned another surgery. I mean, rookie year, his rookie year was a wash because he had that shoulder surgery. And then now he's had the dislocated kneecaps, both legs. I mean, you can't help that kind of stuff. But teams, if you're going to be dealing picks or players or both or some combination of whatever, you're going to look at those, the medical history there and go, well, this is a guy that has trouble playing an entire season. Right. And so, my hope is I'd like to see him at right tackle. The Bengals have, of course, they've got Collins and others that they can use, but I would like to see what he can do there. It's just a matter of, what is that relationship like at this point between the two sides? It was just a blanket, I want to be traded through his agent that was kind of put out into the universe there. And then he doesn't get traded on draft weekend. So I don't know what's ahead. I don't know if this is going to be a, heels in the sand, Carson Palmer type situation, or if he's, come mandatory time, he's going to show up and he's going to do what's asked of him.
Well, I think that he doesn't have the clout to pull a Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer's a franchise quarterback and they can kind of get away with things. He can't. There's a lot of depth behind him, even if it's not fully healthy depth. But I hope that they're both professional and they see that this relationship is mutually beneficial for 2023. He struggled in 2022. So even if they just released him, which they won't because they'd still, they'd still be on the hook for his contract. But he might just sign like a 1-year kind of prove it deal, prove you can play left tackle and be good. But if he comes in and rocks it at right tackle, there's no reason to think that he can't sign a decent contract, long-term contract somewhere else, in eventually transition back to left tackle. But the odds of playing left tackle this year for the Bengals are 0 because they specifically said Orlando Brown Jr. is their new left tackle. So unless there's an injury there.
Yeah. And that was the agreement in signing. Right. We got to talk to him. He didn't really explicitly say that, but that was the draw aside from obviously playing for one of the most competitive teams in the AFC and many other factors. But that was the draw. Some teams were just saying we'll put you at right tackle, and Orlando said thanks but no thanks. I'm going to wait this out. And the Bengals came calling and said, hey, if that's what it's going to take, we'll have you there at left tackle. And I think they thought maybe this transition or what have you would have been a little smoother, meaning Jonah to right tackle. Maybe he would have just accepted that a little easier, but that hasn't seemingly been the case. And to an extent, we've talked about this. I don't want to make this show all about Jonah Williams and everything, but to an extent, I understand it because he is in a contract year. This would be the contract that would probably net him the most money in his professional football career. And when you're talking about playing a position he has not played since a freshman in college, and you're talking about doing it in a contract year if there are growing pains, you got to look at it from his business side of things going, man, if for some reason there's some speed bumps or transition period, whatever you want to call it, this could be not ideal for me setting up my next contract.
Right. Or it could mean there is no next contract. There's that possibility too. Hopefully he's a former first round pick. I'm sure if he plays well this year, he'll be fine. And even if he doesn't, he'll, a former first round pick, he'll be 26 next year or 27 at the most. He'll land on his feet somewhere on like a 1 year kind of prove it deal. But, I understand he's upset. But the needs of the team, that's how it's always going to be. Needs of the team come first. And hopefully he steps up and plays well. So,
yeah. And they were fielding some trade offers from him potentially on night 2, it sounded like, and just nothing was blowing their hair back. Right. So, here is the list of the Bengals picks in case you have missed it. Normally we use Cincy Jungle for this. This is Pro Football Network. I'm going to close that window there. I don't know why that popped up. The picks, obviously, Miles Murphy, their round 1 pick. I was just briefly on another show with Kentley Platt, Math Bomb, who was on Bengals and Brews. And Kentley Platt was saying his quote, I believe, was, it was unfair where the Bengals were able to get Miles Murphy. He feels that was just quite a steal for the Bengals. He kind of figured he was a middle first round guy. You got DJ Turner here. I don't know what's going on with this website here. I may have to share a different one, but DJ Turner, the round 2 pick. Round 3, a little bit of a surprise. We talked about that last night. Jordan Battle, the safety out of Alabama. And then, of course, Charlie Jones, interesting pick, the wide receiver there. Then they go offense. Chase Brown, the running back out of Illinois. Andre, how do you say that one? Iosivas, is that right? Iosivas?
I'm not sure. Actually, I wrote breaking down that pick, and I saw something about how to pronounce it, because I think it starts with like a ye, like the first syllable is a ye, but I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But and then of course they get the punter out of Michigan and a cornerback to round out the class. So a lot of different picks here, and ones that I think make a lot of sense. But it was defense early, offense and special teams late, and to me, Jason, it feels like it was a lot of, I would say of there, what they had 8 picks, right?
Yep. 8 picks.
I would say of the 8, 5 or 6 of them were traits, tools, athleticism, testing, high potential. And the other 2 or 3 were more, okay, these are tape guys, right? These are guys that just, regardless if they didn't test well, their tape is just really good and they show good acumen and all of that, the stuff that you can't gauge with a stopwatch type of thing. So I feel like they still largely went with measurables, athleticism, all that kind of stuff. But there's a couple of exceptions in there.
Yeah, I think so too. I like we talked about a little bit the first night, so Thursday night and last night, when the first pick came across with Miles Murphy, we were like, you know what I mean? And I almost like regret, I feel bad about that now, because it's a great pick. But it just wasn't, with Joey Porter Jr. and Michael Mayer sitting there. I just wasn't expecting it. But I think they did a good job overall. They grabbed some really great athletes. So Yoshivas is, Yoshivas, yes. So okay. Yoshivas is a very good. He's a tall, athletic, fast wide receiver, and that was kind of just the general vibe today. Is we're going to get guys with speed. They're obviously trying to get good team speed. A lot of these guys are going to be special teams contributors, if they make the team and everything like that. But they wanted athletes. They wanted high character guys, guys that they think might be coachable. And they also filled out, there was issues with corner, with depth at corner. So they got 2 corners. They got another safety, which, maybe we're overplaying the free agency signing of Nick Scott. Maybe that's what we're doing, because a lot of analysts believe that Battle's going to step in and possibly start, or at least push Nick Scott for that starting position at free safety. I know that what I read is he's kind of an in the box guy, a lot like Von Bell was. So.
Well, I think we touched on this last night, Jason. It's the Bengals lost Jesse Bates and Von Bell, and that was incredibly valuable to what the defense did. Yes, Trey Hendrickson's been a great addition. Sam Hubbard does what Sam Hubbard does. DJ Reader's been amazing in the middle of that defense. Logan Wilson comes up with big plays. So does Jermaine Pratt. A lot of players out there. And then, of course, it's a solid unit from top to bottom, really. But those safeties were so key, and especially in those big postseason games. And so when you lose both of them in the same offseason, and then you don't, you're not signing necessarily other big ticket safeties or that sort of thing, you got to try and find a recreation. Right. And it really is a compliment to both Bates and Bell, really.
Absolutely,
because that's what I think, that combination of, using Dax Hill and, this year's third round pick, what they've tried to do is recreate what they've built over the last couple of years. That's been very, very successful. So can't blame them for that. And then LeVar Hall is here sending a super chat. Thank you, LeVar. And we're going to send that over to, by the way, if you want to send over some super chats our way for the next couple of days, we're going to send that over to Project Africa with Mohammed Sanu. We're going to send that over to his chair. We're going to pool that. We had a cool interview with him, and I know Jason did a great write-up with him as well on Cincy Jungle. So we're going to pool that and try and get some donations going there. So thank you, LeVar. That'll go there. But first round pass rusher, punter with the most hang time, a defensive back with 4.26 speed, a 4th-round receiver with 110 catches, 12 touchdowns last year, and only 3 drops. I'm good. Here's the deal, man. I mean, there's not a lot of holes on this roster, and the guys they drafted are, they're kind of long-term possible replacements or special teams guys right now, that sort of thing. But competition. I think we all love the Trenton Irwin and Trent Taylor, but these guys come in, and they're going to push them for special, maybe return ability, maybe, future slot if and when the Tyler Boyd era finally comes to pass. I mean, this is what you have to do when you're a perennial winner. You're picking later in rounds, and your roster has been built the right way. You are picking for the future, maybe some immediate rotational gain, but you are picking for the future and long plays, right? Long-term plays.
Yeah, this isn't. They didn't really do. I mean, they did stuff that'll help them this year for sure. DJ Turner will help them this year. Miles Murphy will help them this year. Battle will help them this year. But a lot of the stuff that they did today, with maybe an exception of their running back pick, is going to be, here's our long-term solution to issues that we may have with re-signing Tyler Boyd and possibly re-signing T. Higgins. I hope that we could keep Higgins, but the Burrow thing's still up in the air right now, so we don't know what's going to happen with Higgins. So they're planning for their future. They don't want to do things the way the Rams did, where they sold out the team's future for the next 5-6 years to win a Super Bowl. They want to build sustainable success, and that's what good teams do. So
it is what good teams do. And when they went heavier on defense, and we'll talk about some of our favorite picks here, just not only of today. I know this is day 3 and it's easy to kind of say, well, let's focus on, but I mean, we can kind of put a big bow around this, our favorite picks. And thank you again, LeVar, for that super chat, my friend. That's
absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Here's the thing, dude. I saw, I already forgot the pronunciation.
Yoshivas, I think.
Yoshivas, yes. So I saw that pick, and I knew a little bit about him going into it, and I knew the measurables and the speed and all that kind of stuff. But I went he's taller than this guy that I'm going to mention. I hate to go back and just compare, but there's some similarities in some ways, because Yoshivas he's tall, he's fast, he's got good hands, but the knock is he's a little bit of a body catcher, as well as the competition he went up against too. That was kind of a deal. But I remember a handful of years ago, especially since we just talked to Mohamed Sanu, one of his teammates, Marvin Jones, was the guy the Bengals pick, I believe, in the 6th round. Might have been the 5th. I can't remember. I always get him and Aloka mixed up in that class, 5th or 6th round. Marvin Jones, not as tall, 6'1", I think, but he was a body catcher. If you remember, watch a lot of stuff with the Bengals. He caught the ball with his body, but fast, could move well. Still, even with the body catching, had some good hands, and somehow you go, why is this guy here? Why is he here so late? And the same thing with this kid. I think it was McShay saying he thought this was like a 4th round guy, right?
Yeah.
And so again, I kind of see that a little bit in terms of the body catching, bigger guy, but fast, plays well, and you kind of go, man, probably went a couple rounds later than you think he should have gone. And maybe not the yield is huge as a rookie, but a guy that you can develop and maybe turn into wide receiver 4,
right.
and even as a decoy, when you've got that track speed that he has, even as a decoy along on the field at the same time with a Higgins, with a Boyd, with a Chase, you got to account for it. Right. So I just, that was one where I go, hey, as of today, that was one where I really like that pick.
Yeah, I do too. He's a 3-time Ivy League conference champion heptathlete. And I don't even know what that means. I think hept might mean 8, like an 8-way race. I have no idea.
That would be oct.
Okay, well, I don't know what hept is then.
7?
He went
7.
maybe.
I think hept is 7.
Yeah, he went to Princeton. He probably knows. But I'll tell you what, I got to be.
He would know much more than I. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I want to share a video of him catching a slant
go for it.
and taking it however many yards. Let's see here. I'll open this
if
up.
you
And...
want it.
Stenstrom, Josefas.
And it was like, well, do you want this or not? Go get it if you want
And
it.
then bye.
Josefas, there he goes, creating some space. He could go down
Yeah,
the
and
far sideline.
that's pretty impressive considering you're looking at someone who's
And it was
6
like,
foot
well, do you want this
three,
or not? Go get it if
6
you
foot
want it.
3,
Stenstrom,
and
Josefas, there he goes.
sorry,
creating some space.
No, you're
He could
good.
go down the far sideline.
You're good.
6'3" and 200 pounds. I mean, you know who he reminds me of a little bit, just right now, is a little bit. He reminds me of Slim.
Really?
Tall, lanky, really fast, outside receiver, stretch the field. You know what I mean? Just having a guy like that opens everything up. So, but yeah, no, I thought that was a really good pick.
There was someone else who I apologize, I didn't get the comment up, but someone said it reminds them of Christian Watson of the Packers.
Yeah.
I thought that was,
Yep.
I thought that was a good one. And then I got to pull up the list here again, but man, I mean, the Bengals, I was a little surprised at the 4th round receiver, as I was with the 3rd round safety. But again, you go, well, I think Tyler Boyd's contract is up after this year, right? This kid can play the slot. And again, if you want them to, these are guys you could potentially get in there as kick returners and, you know, all kinds of different things to help your team out. And that it just makes a lot of sense for future development.
Yep. It was probably one of those things where they were really high on him, you know, and they were high on him and he was available and there just maybe wasn't anyone that they were as high at that pick. And that's it. It makes sense. I like the idea of, you know, now you can, if you lose Tyler Boyd, and I would certainly think that's probably the case, then maybe you can transition this kid in seamlessly and not miss a beat.
So who are some of your favorites? I mean, I mean, there were some, obviously Night 2 is always just kind of my favorite in general, but
It is.
I kind of like the idea where, you know, the Bengals, why I mentioned the kid from Princeton is, you know, I like the idea that they realized they went defensive heavy early in this draft. And they're like, hey, let's just keep getting threats, right? Let's keep bringing offensive threats to other teams and say, hey, deal with it. And then of course, you know, God forbid injuries happen and all that kind of stuff too. So you gotta have some stockpiled reserves, but that was one I really liked. What's the nickname? Chuck Sizzle? Is that the Chucky Sizzle or something? Is the 4th round picks?
I have no idea. I have no idea what his nickname. It's a great nickname if that's what it is.
Yeah, I think. I'll have to look that up. But who are some of your favorites?
My favorite today was Illinois running back.
Chase Brown.
Chase Brown. Yeah, I knew he was a guy that could go to the Bengals. I was kind of surprised the Bengals didn't jump on running back earlier in the draft. I don't know if Chase Brown replaces Mixon. I think he probably complements Mixon this year, unless, you know, there's like a Zeke Elliott kind of thing or something happens in free agency. He had 9 consecutive games in 2022 with 100+ yards on the ground, averaged 27.3 carries per game. So he can handle a workhorse kind of a load. It says he's adept at following and steering behind lead blocks and avoiding linebackers. He sets up open field moves to elude tacklers. He can run. He can catch routes out of the backfield. So I know he had some fumble issues in 2022, but that was kind of abnormal. But I think that they found a running back that maybe could. I don't think he's going to replace Joe Mixon, but I think he might replace Samaje Perine. His PFF pass blocking grades were, for the most part, they were
They were pretty poor, right? I mean,
well, he had a few games where they were bad, really bad. And then he had 8 games or so where they were over 70, you know, with a green square. So very inconsistent, we'll say that. But hopefully with some coaching, you know, and he even said in his post-draft interview that he knows that he has to improve his pass blocking. But my guess is that's what the Bengals see him as Chase Brown is the new Samaje Perine.
Hopefully, here's the RAS score. By the way, Sten being incredibly generous as well, sending us. I don't, unfortunately, I'm so ignorant that I don't know the Denmark currency, but I believe that's Denmark currency he's sending us. So appreciate that, and that'll go to Mohammed Sanu's charity as well. Appreciate
Awesome.
you,
Thank you
very, very much. Yes, 9.8, I believe, was the most recent RAS score from Chase Brown, one of the tools guys. And the questions, yeah, you mentioned the fumbles and all that kind of stuff. It's a high volume of touches, I think.
Right. Oh, it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think they just really ran him to the ground. He was the entire Illinois offense, and so that's why I think as a complementary piece in the NFL, at least initially, that bodes well for him. Where he's not the guy that needs to touch the ball 40 times at the pro level immediately. Maybe it's 5 to 10 a game.
Right.
I think
he averaged. Go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say he averaged 27.3 carries in 2022, which is nuts. That's a lot. So.
It is. And, you give him the occasional catch. He's not necessarily, an amazing receiver, but he's good enough.
Yeah.
Pass blocking, he admitted himself that he wants to work on that. And, he'll probably be asked to do more of that, but it was a guy, again, that the Bengals really liked, and some feel that, man, this is a guy that could have been a 3rd or 4th round pick. Maybe the carries and touches scared some teams off, but, a guy that I think has a lot of value. And I think as you go, Jason, especially those first 5 to 6 picks the Bengals made. You can go across the board and make an argument where you go, man, this was a guy who was highly valued.
Yep.
This was a guy who was highly regarded, and they just kept snagging him later than people thought.
Yeah, they let the draft come to them. They didn't panic. They didn't move up. Everybody made a really huge deal about tight end. Even you and I, when they selected Miles Murphy over Michael Mayer, we were shocked. But they were making a big deal about tight end. A lot of people were upset that they traded back with the Chiefs in the 3rd round and missed out on Darnell Washington, who ended up going to Pittsburgh. But I'm not really sure that they came into this draft thinking that they need a tight end. I mean, they might be all in on Irv Smith, which would match the trend of what they've done over the last few. They had Uzama, who they drafted, but it matches what they did with Hayden Hurst, and now they bring in Irv Smith, who's going to sign a 1-year deal after having a hard time staying healthy. And I think that the Bengals are planning on turning Irv Smith into the next Hayden Hurst. They'll sign a 3-year deal next year with the Miami Dolphins, and they'll grab the next guy looking for a prove-it deal. And
this regime just does not value that position highly.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, at least I shouldn't say that they don't value the position just in general. If you got a good player, you got a good player. You bring a guy in, you like him. Obviously, you value that player. What I mean by that is using draft capital. Or high, huge financial free agency investments. I just don't see it. They brought in, technically, if you want to go all the way back to the calendar of September of 22 to now, they've brought in or re-signed 3 tight ends. And that's Ossie, that's Irv Smith, and that's Drew Sample. So again, you go back to Mixon and you go back to Jonah Williams, this is also an endorsement potentially by the Bengals of who they have in that tight end room. They like who they have, and they feel that, again, we talked about this too, Jason, it's just not worth a huge investment for a guy that maybe will be the 5th or 6th passing option on a regular basis in the offense.
Right.
And if you feel like you fixed the offensive line with Orlando, which you've done across the board the past couple of years, a blocking tight end doesn't make a ton of sense. Darnell Washington, I think a lot of people liked him, myself included, especially as you're looking at him in the 3rd round, but there's knee injury issues and other stuff that, that I think scared some teams. And, I think the Bengals, again, they kind of showed us a little bit about how they feel about certain players and position groups this weekend based on who they picked and who they didn't pick.
Yeah, and just to kind of nail that point you just made home about not valuing the tight end position as much as some other, in the 4th round they took that wide receiver. I just totally blanked on his name.
Charlie Jones.
Charlie Jones, yeah. In the 4th round they took Charlie Jones at wide receiver, which is not really a position of need this year. And when they did that, let's see, Josh Wiley, tight end out of UC.
He went in the 5th round. I
Yeah,
forget where
he was still on the board. Miami,
Tennessee.
I think he went to Tennessee. Yeah, he went to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Will, let's see, Will Mallory, the tight end
Oh, yeah.
out of
Yep.
Miami, Florida. He was still on the board. He went to the Colts. Tight end Payne Durham out of Purdue was still on the board, and Davis Allen out of Clemson were still on the board. So those guys, there were guys available, and
Where
they
did
just
Davis Allen go?
He ended up Davis Allen ended up going to the Rams.
I didn't pay attention to him. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that like they obviously valued that Charlie Jones at wide receiver more than any of these guys at tight end, and maybe they saw that Charlie Jones is a better wide receiver than they felt these guys would be tight ends. But I think it's a lot to do with just the fact that they don't value the position as much as wide receiver. So.
They do, and let's be honest. The Bengals wide receiver core right now is a bit of the bread and butter of what they do on offense, and a big reason for their success. I mean, it's just kind of how it is. So, I mean, there are a lot of picks you like. There are a lot of things you can make arguments for a lot of different things, but the Bengals again. I feel like they did some. It's one of those things. The picks grow on you, and maybe you talk yourself into things a little bit more as the picks, initially you go, oh, really? But I feel like there's a lot of, I love the blend more favoring athleticism, but the blend of a couple of guys in there that are the intangible stuff as well. Right. I mean, I love that there's 2 or 3 players that maybe didn't test all that great, but it's like, who the hell cares? Because look what they did on tape, what I mean? Sure. And the rest of the guys, they have a little bit of like, they've got a bit of the, look at them on tape, but it's also like, holy crap, they're jumping out of the gym and, burning up the turf with 4.26 40s and stuff. So,
they took guys that either produced in college at major universities, major programs against major competition, or they took guys that just tested through the roof athletically. They didn't seem to grab anyone that seemed to have like a character issue, but they have a type. You produce and you're a leader, or you're a crazy athlete. And there's nothing wrong with drafting like that. Great teams great teams have great athletes, and they have high character guys that are locker room leaders. You know what I mean? I think it's great. So
Jets drafted Kuntz. I hope Uzama likes all the money he got, because he ain't getting many receptions. Is from Dan the Man.
Yeah.
We love Dan because Dan's kind of our he's our resident trivia guru and our fact checker. We love it. And I pride myself on knowing quite a bit of Bengals trivia, but there's stuff that Dan pulls out every once in a while. I'm like, wow, that's impressive, man. That is impressive. But good to see a lot of familiar faces, some new ones as well. I know obviously excitement and everything is at a high with the Bengals and the NFL draft coming to a conclusion here. If you are new here, we appreciate you checking our show out. We do a number of different types of shows on this channel, be it through Orange or the Orange and Black Insider or the Cincy Jungle podcast channel in general. But this channel has our show, Jason, and his guy, Kevin, our guy, not his guy, our guy.
Yeah, our guy.
Yeah, they spearhead 3 and Out. And then, of course, on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel, we also have Talking Football with Bengal Jim and friends. Bengal Jim was at the draft. We were hoping to kind of catch up with him, but I'm sure he had a hell of a fun time down there. And then, of course, we have Coach Speak and Chalk Talk with Matt Minnick, who does a great job breaking down all kinds of different things. So we've got a lot of different shows for you on our YouTube channel. You got to subscribe and like. And click the bell as well to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. You got to like the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. And of course, if you like the audio side of things, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the major ones, we're there. You got to give a rating if you would. We appreciate it. And of course, subscribe so you can get all those different shows that we provide for you. We're trying to get you stuff pretty much every day of the week as it goes right now. So, All right. Well, let's kind of start wrapping some things up and talk. I don't know if you want to do grades or if you want to just kind of talk through some of the picks. I mean, I know we kind of said, hey, I really like some of the, this pick, that pick, but, I think through the first 3 rounds, you and I still kind of were in that B+-ish range, right?
Right.
I'm still kind of there. there are picks that kind of waver back and forth, and obviously, there are things where you go, I understand the punter pick in the 6th round.
Yep.
You could probably make an argument where you go, well, where's the tight end? Where's maybe the developmental backup quarterback? That sort of thing. Especially when you see, I think Max Duggan went, 7th round, and you could kind of make arguments for that where you go, well, maybe that makes a little more sense. But at the same time, I mean, I don't really. There's not really one there, especially as I took a night to sleep on the Miles Murphy pick. There's not really one there where I go, I don't get it. You know what I mean? There's stuff where there's stuff where you say there's maybe more pressing needs, at least in my eyes, but there's not a pick here where I go, what the hell was that? You know what I mean? I feel like everything has a decent amount of logic to it. Every pick they made has a decent amount of logic to it, whether it's short-term or long-term.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Every pick they made, from all 8 of them made sense in some way. You can argue. Anyone could step up and make an argument and point out that yes, it makes sense. You know what I mean? And tight end is still a need. I don't think that it's going to be filled. I think that we're going to roll into the season with Sample and Irv Smith. Unless they bring in some undrafted free agent that I don't know about, you know what I mean? But no, every pick they made makes pretty good sense. It's either to contribute this year, or like you said, that filling spots next year, or rotational pieces. Like Miles Murphy will probably be a rotational piece this year. No, I think overall I would give it a B+, but edging towards A- after some good sleep. I think after some good sleep.
Yeah. What's that like? I haven't had any of that.
Yeah, no, same here. Here.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, something knocked over here. I'm in agreement with you. I kind of feel like, this is a class where, it's maybe, especially the first couple nights, weren't the most sexiest picks because of the positions drafted, and or some of the people saying, where's the tight end, myself included, where's the tight end, maybe where's the running back, that sort of thing. But they were confident in what they were doing. There were a couple times where I'm like, I feel like waiting may have hurt you, but that's just what they wanted to do. They wanted to sit back and let things come to them. Oftentimes they do that most of the time. Sometimes it has burned them pretty badly, and other times it's worked out well for them. Yeah. So, it's also now, it's hard. It's weird to say about the Cincinnati Bengals, but when you are going to back-to-back AFC Championship games and you've been to a Super Bowl, you start to get the benefit of the doubt, right? Yep. I mean, you're like, hey, I don't really get it, or hey, why a safety, and that sort of thing, and you go, well, trust the process at this point.
I think we can confidently say that Duke Tobin knows best, and that they're doing the right thing. They've done the right thing over the last few years. There's no reason to not believe in what they're doing right now.
Yeah, so we have a couple of updates on some reports on undrafted free agents. Washington Huskies. I really like this kid. I was asked about him on another show. Washington Huskies offensive lineman Jackson Kirkland, a guy who can play a little bit inside, has played tackle. He's going to be inside in the pros, but I like the potential of that guy there. And then they had, let's see here, Tulane safety Larry Brooks the third, and then there were a couple of others as well. I think one that just came across the wire I was told about. UTC defensive lineman Devonja Maxwell. Oh wait, not that one. Devonta Maxwell was going to sign with the Chicago Bears, but ended up going to the Bengals. So he has 37.5 sacks in college. Wow. So small school guy, but that's something that excites you there. So Bengals are doing their work here, and there are a few others as well that I know came across the wire, but Bengals are starting to load up their undrafted free agent roster.
Yeah, and that news comes off. It's chaotic, and it's all being blasted all over Twitter. But
wires get crossed. You get it
right. But yeah, and they brought in I'm trying to think. Some big Vontae's Perfect was a undrafted free agent. So they brought in guys that have contributed heavily as undrafted. La'el Collins was an undrafted free agent. I don't know if you knew that.
I did, because there was a whole weird story that he was going to be a first round pick, and then there was all this stuff going on around him. But
and then so there's a few other ones. I think overall grade wise for the entire draft, I give it a B plus, shading towards A minus.
Okay,
so pretty happy with
it.
it.
I am with you too, and I think my son is with me on that one. He heard a celebratory daddy, and he's running upstairs with a new toy, it sounds like, so that's awesome.
There you go.
But we're gonna start wrapping things up, not just because they just came home, but because we've been on it for about 40 minutes now and talking about this. But overall, I think you and I are in agreement. B plus-ish range, A minus-ish. Obviously, you gauge this 3 years down the road, you go, okay, well, that's actually what happened here. But
right.
I think there's a lot of foresight here. I think there's maybe some rotational immediate yield, but I think this is also, hey man, we gotta, we have a lot of staples at a lot of important positions, whether it's wide receiver, defensive end, defensive back, but we've got to plan for the future, and I think they did that.
Yep, and those are the first 3 picks of the draft: defensive end, cornerback, safety. Those are premium positions with guys that they like that fell to them, especially the first 2 with Murphy and Turner. Both of those I thought were home run picks, just because they should have been drafted, or I thought they would have been drafted, several picks ahead of where they went. So,
yep. All in all, I think we should all be pretty pleased with what they did. There were a couple of things where you go, well, why didn't they do that, or why wasn't a position picked higher? And again, I think some of that has to do with endorsement of the players that we had questions on. I think, Jonah, maybe Jonah's more on board than we think or have heard. Maybe Joe Mixon in that situation that's going on off the field, and other, maybe the financials are working themselves out as well. But, maybe all of that is just being taken care of, and it just makes more sense to wait to the 5th round and get a value pick there at running back. And then, of course, tight end, you just kind of like what you already have on the roster and feel like you don't need to reach. And maybe that's where the Bengals' heads were at through this whole process.
Yep, absolutely. And it could be something, at right tackle, maybe La'el Collins is going to be healthier than we expect, earlier than we expect. So, I think right now they're better than they were at the end of the year last year. After the draft, I absolutely think they are 100%.
Well, and they've got other guys that they drafted for the future, Tyson Anderson and such, that they'll also be in the mix. But let's get on out of here, man. I know you're ready for some rest. I know I am, and as well as some grub. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody tuning in live, tuning in after the fact. We've been trying to pepper you with all kinds of content. My kids have been in like every single show, it feels like. So they're making cameos, but it is what it is. I hope you enjoy. I mean, you hear him in the background. He's doing something with a car. I don't know what he's doing. But regardless, the Cincinnati Bengals and the 2023 NFL draft is in the books. Their class is in the books, and we are going to continue to break it down, get you news on undrafted free agents, all kinds of things on cincyjungle.com and our podcast. Keep it tuned in. Jason, thanks, bud, and we'll catch up soon and do more of these.
Sounds good.
All right.